All righty. Good afternoon and welcome. Week 9 of the Bold Bald Breakdown right here on the Big Play Sports Network.
The bold, bald, immobilized breakdown.
Yeah, I mean, Shooky, this is no laughing matter, obviously. We had a little incident yesterday where the wall came down, and this is my state, so I'm just kidding. I don't want to give anybody in the
Can you get it off is the question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
No, you're totally fine.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. All right. Yes, it is. Indeed. Week 9 of the Bold Ball Breakdown. I am Chico Borman with you until 2. By the way, coming up at 1 after Nick and I finish, Terry Pluto, Cleveland.com, Cleveland Plain Dealer will weigh in. Not only the Browns, Guardians have a new manager, Cavs, all that good stuff. So Terry dropping by at 1. But first things first, Week 9 Bold Ball Breakdown. Browns, Nick, I think, and I heard some people or saw some people on Twitter that I think they were upset at the idea that others were upset. This is where social media is beautiful. Because, well, you know what? These people are acting as though the Browns should have done what they did to Arizona, and they're not giving them any credit. It's not. They got to win. They got to, and they dominated on defense. Deshaun Watson, a tale of two halves as far as, but yeah, I mean, you are expecting the Browns to win comfortably. They did. I just think when it happens right on your doorstep is coming the Baltimore Ravens. I should say you're going to Baltimore, so their doorstep. And it's going to be, a long day's work, 3 hours long, hard work in Baltimore on Sunday.
Yeah, well, first off, if you've been around with the Browns long enough, it's kind of funny that we could ever sit back and think the Browns should have comfortably won because they've been the team on the other side of this ledger.
I heard that against Seattle. Some people were saying that. It was like,
really?
Yeah. Like, no, they should beat Seattle.
Yeah, that reminds me last year when the Cavs went to the playoffs and they're like, they'll dominate the Knicks. And I was like, I don't think you've been watching the Knicks. Not a good matchup. Yes, the Browns, they should have won comfortably. They lucked out in a few areas, or one specific area, and that was quarterback. The fact that the Cardinals decided to move on from Josh Dobbs because they realized the same thing the Browns realized is that they could get value for him at the trade deadline. That basically cleared the way for the Browns to face a rookie quarterback who'd never seen any NFL action in the regular season. It would have been maybe a little bit different if Kyler Murray was playing, but he wasn't. So the Browns lucked out, right? And they did their job. That's what was most important, is that they did what they were supposed to do. Shut down a rookie quarterback who has not faced any defense, let alone that type of defense. I think what was most encouraging is the fact that they were still able to put 27 points on the board, because Deshaun Watson coming back and making it through the game and in a healthy state, not having any, aggravations. By the way, re-aggravation is redundant. Let's stop saying re-aggravate. It's just aggravate. Okay.
Oh, all right.
It's one of my pet peeves.
Went into the we go deep into the mind of Nick Shook.
Yeah, I think that was that's an old editor that had that issue, and I was like, you know what, you're
editor
right.
would say that.
Yeah, they told me that back in the day, and an old boss of mine was like, it's not re-aggravate, and I was like, you're right, it is just aggravate. But he didn't aggravate that shoulder. He played pretty solidly for the most part. I have some gripes that we can get into, and they did their job. It's just that I think people want to celebrate wins like they're massive wins every time, and I understand that because it's a weekly sport, and people love the Browns in this town. They want to enjoy it.
What happened against Seattle the week before.
Yeah, they've been bad for a long time. So enjoying their wins, you should celebrate that. But let's also be realistic, because not every win is the same. This is a win that you were supposed to get. I've never felt more comfortable about a Browns game in the third or fourth quarter than I did on Sunday. Like, I was like that. I think they had maybe 13 or 17 points at that point. Yeah, it was 13 points. I'm like, they're fine. Halftime, I think they're fine. I don't think the Cardinals are going to come back from this.
I mean, poor Clayton Tune. I know he's getting paid handsomely, and he's an NFL quarterback, and life is not that bad.
It's just a bad situation to put a rookie in. So the Browns did their job. Congratulations. But if you win this week, it's a vastly different win than last week.
Bingo.
That's the difference.
And, it's funny because here the Browns sit. Somebody asked me this yesterday after I got off the air. They said, if, let's say that everybody was healthy, because that's obviously been a huge issue, that Conklin doesn't go down, Chubb doesn't go down, now you got Wills going down. Let's say all those guys are healthy and the Browns are still 5-3. And he looked at me and said, "Would you take it?" And I said, "In a second." I mean, because now again, this is how the season and the entire NFL has been playing out. It's just crazy. But I would have thought, well, San Francisco, that could be a tough. You actually get that W. You blow out Cincinnati in week 1. Granted, Joe Burrow is not the Joe Burrow he is now. But 5-3 is 5-3. But I also think there's no getting around that. Yeah, this might be the best team in the AFC right now. The best team in the AFC.
Yeah, that's a lot of folks are thinking that, and that's the way they've been playing. I mean, they've taken quality opponents and taken them to the woodshed the last couple weeks, last 2 or 3 weeks.
They bullied the hell out of the Seahawks.
Seahawks look like they never got off a. They look like they took the red eye back from the West Coast to the Eastern Seaboard.
And not you,
not me, and I know how that feels. They looked jet lagged as all hell, and did not look like the same team that the Browns played. And I think the road environment has something to do with that. The Browns went into a hostile environment. They're wearing their throwbacks. They're dealing with that extra energy, and they still almost came out with a win. But the Ravens look fantastic right now. They look very impressive. They're winning in a number of different ways. And the funny thing, though, is that we're at that point in the season now where I look at the Browns' 5-3 record, and I'm looking at the Monday Night Football postgame last night, SVP Sports Center, and he's got that big board up there, which, by the way, I didn't realize was in a basement. It's a big-ass basement, dude. That's huge. Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that either.
That's supposedly that's in a basement in D.C. I don't know. But give me that basement. He's got a big board with all the playoff odds, and there's the Browns smack dab in the middle, 55% chance of making the playoffs. And I'm thinking, man, that would look a lot better if they would have won in Seattle. That would look a lot better if they would have won that Pittsburgh game. You start looking at the games they lost, you think they were close. And that's the good thing. There's one loss this year for them in which they were blown out and dominated. The bad thing is that the team that did it to them, they're facing this weekend.
Yeah. And, the other thing, you mentioned it with playoff percentage. I mean, if it ended right now, all 4. No, we've never had this happen. Now, again, still plenty of football. I get it. But if the season ended today, all 4 teams in the AFC North would be in the postseason. And it just goes to show you. Now, I think now, and we've talked about this before, that as the season goes along, teams are going to separate. Teams that you thought were great aren't going to be so great. Now, some of that's dictated by injury, as we know. But I think you're starting to see, okay, Baltimore is clearly at the top. Cincinnati's right on their heels. Then the Browns. I mean, the Steelers' offense is terrible, but, you're not going to bet against Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
They're not going to go away. They're not good. They're nowhere near the caliber, the top of the division. But it's Mike Tomlin, and they ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, and that's frustrating, actually, because as somebody who watches the entire league, I watch them play every week. I'm like, I look at their record. I'm like, there's no way they're that good. They just don't play that well as a team.
Yeah.
Their brand of football is not 5-3 good. So, if we project all this out, since we're on this topic right now, I went through this exercise yesterday, and if you look at the standings, I'm pretty ready to identify contenders and pretenders already from what I've seen in the AFC so far. Buffalo is the only team where I'm like, dude, this could go one of 2 ways because they're frustrating, they're inconsistent. Josh Allen's being asked to do too much. We've talked about that already. They're not an elite team, I don't think. They have the potential to be one, but they're not. And they could find themselves in a sticky spot where they're suddenly on the outside looking in at 5-4 right now. But the rest of the AFC, I could see a scenario in which 3 of the 4 North teams make it. I think Pittsburgh does fall away. I think Pittsburgh finishes 9-8, 8-9, somewhere around there. They get a tie to keep Tomlin's, streak of no losing seasons going, whatever. And they finish 8-1. Thank you, odd numbers. But I think that they're the team out of all the teams in the AFC North that could fall away. Whereas it's going to be Ravens, Bengals, Browns. I had the Browns as the 3rd wild card. Because if you look at the other divisions, Jacksonville's got a pretty strong hold on the AFC South. Houston is, they're flirting. They're a little dangerous, but they're young.
Yeah.
And then the West, it's the Chiefs. I don't trust the Chargers. I don't think they're a playoff team. The Raiders aren't a playoff team. The Broncos certainly aren't a playoff team. Indianapolis isn't a playoff team because they lost Anthony Richardson. Tennessee is not a playoff team, although, have what say whatever you want about Will Levis. And in the East, it's Miami and Buffalo. The Jets, if you saw last night's game, not a playoff team. New England, not a playoff team. It's all of a sudden there's a very small pool, and it looks like, hey, okay, all right.
Miami, are not back to last 6 games against a team with a winning record, 0-6.
Yeah,
I mean, not every team.
So are they pretenders?
Yeah, exactly. Not every team is going to allow you to hang 70 like the Broncos
So,
did.
well, what's the most important thing? The Browns cannot be the team that gets caught out of the AFC North. They cannot be who I think is going to be the Steelers. And we don't know if they can or can't be. Like, I don't feel 100% confident. If they play like they did on Sunday, they play like they have for most of the season, they'll be right there. They'll be right there in a winnable, in a conference that it's there for the taking for an AFC wildcard spot.
Now, we know the defense because we've seen the defense put on dominant performances even before Sunday, which that was another one. I look at Arizona's offense, and I mean, certainly you take away, hey, what we know about the Browns' defense was on full display. There wasn't going to be a whole lot of testing coming from Arizona because not only people forget, it's not only Kyler Murray out, James Conner was out. I think they're both back this week. I think Conner returns also. So there really wasn't much. Now, again, it's not to go back to Nick's original point. This isn't to downplay the victory. You got to win those games, and they won that game, and they won it convincingly.
It's just not a measuring stick.
Right.
That's all it is.
And I think this is what makes it exciting. Like this isn't a matter of like, oh, this is a daunting task, or we're really, I mean, it is. It's a big challenge, but if you've devoted and allocated all of these resources, whether it be contracts, whether it be draft picks, this is what you're set up to do. And you want to be set up. I don't know if they will be on Sunday because this Baltimore team is playing as well as they possibly can play. But I do think the things that we talked about last week, well, the defense needs to clean this up and that up. You saw that, but like we said, the quality of opponent is nowhere near what it's going to be coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, I think I don't know. There's a bit of pessimism. I am a cynic at heart at this point.
I'm with you. Yeah. I'm more like you than.
Yeah, and I look at this game and I always think the worst. Expect the worst, hope for the best. And
I'm nervous. Yeah.
It
is daunting.
But at the same time, I didn't feel like that a week ago when it concerned the Ravens because the Lions game felt like the peak of what the Ravens could do. But they jumped all over them so quickly that it kind of threw the balance of power in that game out of whack, and that like the running game couldn't be there for the Lions. They had to throw the ball. The Ravens had 28 points on the board before the Lions got a first down. Like at that point, you're trying to dig yourself out of a hole that you're not going to get out of. So you can only take that so far when you're trying to evaluate a team. But then last week, they went and played a Seattle team at home, where the Ravens had been very good, by the way, at home, and they dominated them on the ground. And I was like, oh. Okay, if this is what this team can be, then you're in for some trouble if you're playing them. Because before it was Lamar making magic, finding guys, Zay Flowers, a pass or two to Odell before he leaves for the rest of the game or whatever. 9 throws to Mark Andrews. Lamar has 2 rushing touchdowns. They win by 10. That's who they were. The scary part about them now is their defense is starting to really come together, and they suddenly know how to run the football again.
Yeah, and again, we got the week 9 of the Bold Ball breakdown here on the Big Play Sports Network. Mike Chico Borman, Nick Shook joining me as well. I think the thing with Baltimore that I'm looking at over the last 2 weeks, certainly last week, is that, first of all, going into the season, I was under the impression, and I know I wasn't the only one, that said, well, that Baltimore defense, they could be hurting as far as a pass rush. Then the secondary, struggling because you had an injury to your best player and Humphrey. And this defense, granted, they're not the 2000 Ravens, but when you're looking at numbers and you're seeing just how dominant they've been, and they were again, I mean, they shut down. See, Kenneth Walker was never a factor. Nick, the things that we thought might be an issue for Baltimore heading into the season have not been an issue, certainly at first on the defensive side of the ball.
Number 1 in total yards in the NFL defensively allowed, the Browns. Number 2, Baltimore.
Yeah.
Okay. The Browns' strength prior to Nick Chubb's injury was rushing yards, being able to run the ball. They have not had him for the vast majority of the season. They're not the best running team. They figure out a way to make it work with the committee that they have. That would probably be the area that you target against this team because the Ravens are average against the run. They're really good against the pass. And the reason that they're really good against the pass is They bring pressure at you from every angle, and they force you into bad decisions, and that's what concerns me. I feel like we're speeding past the Cardinals game, but again, like there's only so much to talk about with that game.
I know. I was just going to say the same thing.
But I watched the Ravens play football, and I watched Deshaun Watson play football on Sunday, and the number one thing that stuck out to me from Deshaun Watson wasn't that, hey, he threw that great pass to Amari Cooper between two defenders, which was fantastic, by the way, and made me go, oh, wow, okay. It's the fact that he's still slow to process and doesn't trust his offensive line, and what team's going to capitalize on that? The Baltimore Ravens. So, you really got to be on your P's and Q's, cross your T's, dot your I's, the whole nine to be able to beat this team. They have to be prepared better than I think they even were last week, and a lot of that starts with quarterback.
So, and let's get into Deshaun, because watching that game, hearing Adam Archuleta, who was on the color commentary with Spiro Didi, so Didi was on the sideline, and Archuleta said a couple of things that kind of stood out for me. One was, we keep talking about, his fifth start or fourth start, whatever start. He goes, every start feels like his first start because you haven't really.
Yeah, he's got no rhythm. He last completed a game in week 3.
Yeah,
it was 6 weeks ago. You know how much happens in 6 weeks? I don't have an example, but a lot can happen in 6 weeks, and he just hasn't been able to get any sort of consistency. There are flashes. There were flashes on Sunday where I was like, okay, he's starting to. Figured out.
Ball, it was incredible. The other one that concerned me, because we'll get to the good here in a moment, was the pass out in the flat where Archuleta just said, Spiro sees it initially, and he's like, oh, did that get tipped or did that fall out of his hand? He goes, no, it's his footwork. Look at his footwork. And, of course, when he got done, he
doing the shoulder thing.
Yeah, he did the shoulder thing. But, those are things.
That's rust.
Yeah. And that's where I think one of those things we all need to be reminded of, and we joke about they're not robots, they're not this, they're not that. They need reps. They need practice. I mean, Tiger Woods was, maybe the greatest of all time, and he was constantly beating golf balls. And MJ, you know what I mean? So, it just stands to reason that in the NFL at that level, after that, not just this year not playing a lot, but then prior to that, the 2 years, all of it, it's going to take a little while. That was the bad news. The good news is you saw him get into a rhythm, and I think we all, every fan out there, needed to see Deshaun rear back, plant that foot, and deliver a bomb. And I mean, right in stride to Amari Cooper.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Couldn't be any better. And that's when I was like, okay, maybe that's still in him. And I mean, let's think about it. What if you hadn't ridden a bike in 10 years? Your first few pedals, you're getting your balance and everything, are not going to be pretty. But you start riding down the street, 5, 10, 15 minutes, an hour. Suddenly you're riding with one hand on the bars. You're leaning back. You're chilling out. You're having a good time. It all comes back to you with wheelies. All right. Speaking of which, I have to go on this small tangent.
Yeah.
So I'm doing a hike at the Presidio in San Francisco over the weekend with my fiance.
Very cultured man, this Nick Shook.
We're walking up along the Golden Gate Bridge, and it's so foggy you can't see it. So we get up to the top of this trail, and we realize that you can either go this way or it's like a 2-mile walk back to where we had parked. So we're going to turn around. So we take some pictures, turn around, start walking back down. These bikes come up. 500 bikes. People riding from the East Bay, from San Francisco. They got it's not just a bunch of people we're on a bike ride. They're blaring rap music. They're having a good time. Some dude's riding on it backward. He's laying across the handlebars backward, pedaling, just looking like this the whole time, blown away. This kid rode up this hill to the bridge on a bike with no front wheel, pulling a wheelie the entire time. The good thing about that, and why I have to tie all this in, is the Browns don't need Deshaun Watson to ride up a hill with one rear wheel the whole time and hold a wheelie, which I don't know what type of core strength it takes to keep that balance, but I was impressed nonetheless.
It's a hell of an analogy.
They just need to get him up the damn hill.
Okay, then I'll go back. I'll counter that with, first of all, I got to comment on this for a second. If this guy doesn't make it and this guy goes down, has he not seen Alcatraz? Does he doesn't really believe those guys were able to swim to safety. That's, you get into the waters under that Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh, they're icy. They're extremely cold.
Your history.
Foggy that day. Yeah.
So that's no crazy.
Yeah. There's no return.
It's not like he lost the wheel. It
was not on the bike.
Wow. Yeah. See, that's just it. I don't need
Deshaun Watson to remove a front wheel from his bike just to prove a point.
Superhero.
Yeah.
Style points even. I mean, I guess everything's style points these days. Yeah, I mean, he had a few of those style points in the second half. But if you can, one thing they didn't do, no turnovers, right?
Yes.
If you can do that against Baltimore, you've got a legitimate chance. Now, it's not everything because then, they've got their offense, which we're going to talk about. But if Deshaun Watson and that offense, and Kevin Stefanski, I think, has called a pretty good game, pretty good couple of games. They've been able to run the ball. It's not going to be Nick Chubb, but they're able to run the ball. If they can continue that, which is a huge, huge task Sunday in Baltimore, then, okay, I want to see how this one plays out.
Yeah, because if you go back, all we have to reference with this matchup is what happened in the first game, which a lot like that Lions game against the Ravens kind of got out of control for the Browns. And the reason was the turnovers. If you take the turnovers, and I don't like to do this because I don't like to play what if, because what happened, and you'd be a fool to just take that out. But if you do take those turnovers out of that game, Browns defense is doing an all right job against that offense. It wasn't until they were forced into a spot that they didn't want to be in, where you're down 3 touchdowns and you got to throw the football, all that stuff, that they realized. And you had a Deshaun Watson who was not healthy, who had just suffered that shoulder injury, right?
Yep.
Could not play. Like, you're in a bad spot. DTR was your quarterback. It's kind of hard to be able to judge that result with all that you know now and where these teams are now. The downside, if you're a Browns fan, is that the Ravens are a much better team now than they were then after they dominated the Browns. But the Browns are not going to have to rely on DTR or hopefully P.J. Walker. And you hope that they protect the football like they did on Sunday. And that's the thing, though. It's like, they didn't turn the ball over against Arizona. Well, Arizona's got, 3 guys in the defense that I'm really worried about right now. Zaven Collins, who left the game for a little bit.
Yep.
Dennis Gardeck has been a sack machine this year for that team, or at least a pressure machine. And
can I guess the third?
Buda Baker. Buda Baker's the guy. Yeah.
Buda. Yeah, I think you had it in your takeaways. They're thinking they're lucky
he was the guy on that defense. The Browns probably could have had 2 more touchdowns if it wasn't for Buda Baker.
I mean, open field tackles, laying he is just everywhere.
He's a great player.
Washington, he was.
Baltimore has a lot more than just Buda Baker. They got a lot of good guys on that team. So.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that. Obviously, continue talking about that as we continue on. Week 9 of the Bold Ball Breakdown. Chico Borman, Nick Shook, as the Browns shut out the Arizona Cardinals. So we were playing this game yesterday on the show, Nick. It feels like everybody remembers where they were when the Browns shut out the Buffalo Bills in that 8-0. That 8-0. Well, how old?
Oh, wasn't that the? Don't ask me how old I was. I was in high school. That was a. Wasn't that a Sunday nighter? Or a Monday nighter? Was that the?
I thought it was a Sunday afternoon.
Was it the windy day? Because they played each other 3 or 4 years in a row in that time, and one of them was 6-3. Another one was a shutout, and then there was another one that was in prime time. The Browns won on a last-second field goal.
You know what? The 6-3 was in that huge snowstorm.
Yeah, because I remember it took me 3 hours to get to school the next day.
Okay, yeah, 6-3. You're right about that. Okay, so 8-0. Maybe it was on a Monday night, but they had not shut out a team before that game.
Oh, and I'm even thinking that 08 game. I'm talking about the snowstorm that I saw that was a Monday nighter was in Buffalo, because the 08 game or the 07 game or the 08 game.
Right.
The 07 game. Okay, all right, now we're on track. I was at that game. I'm not even kidding you. I was at that game. I walked into that stadium backwards with my dad wearing Carhartt, and you had to walk in backward because it was snowing so hard and was so icy that it was stinging your face when you walked in. I can't believe I forgot that. You couldn't see the other side of the stadium.
I mean, did you have to, at any point, did you go into war, or did you just, what? That's a true blue,
born different,
Northeast Ohio snow belt. By the way, people think that the snow belt is right here, Cleveland.
No, it's that way.
Yeah, snow belt. You start going a little bit more, then it's true snow belt area.
Yeah.
But, so, I mean, their defense, they shut out Arizona. Last time they had done that was mid-2000s against Buffalo.
The weather was why.
Yeah,
then
the weather
Phil
was
Dawson
definitely why.
Hit a knuckler through the snow. There was a safety because a snap went over a punter's head, and he just kicked it out of the back of the end zone. It was anarchy.
Yeah.
It was like a scene from Animal House, except it was a football game.
And I mean, if it was going to happen to a team, it was going to happen to the Browns, obviously. But
Also, to answer that, yeah, you're right. The next year is when they won 29-27. That was on Monday night. Phil Dawson,
And that was the-
56-yarder to win.
right. Yep. Okay.
Just to clarify everything.
So when we talk about the defense and what they were able to do against Arizona, and now we flip the script, and we're going to get to numbers that matter from the Arizona game and all that. We haven't forgotten about it. But I'm with you, Nick. It's really what they did on Sunday was great. We just talked about how we all needed to see Deshaun Watson do what he did. And when we talk about what Andrew Berry focused on during the offseason, it was largely defensive line, center of that defensive line,
Paid off.
and up front. And by the way, Dalvin Tomlinson had an incredible day, but stopping the run. So it's like everything is. I know it's just one game Sunday against Baltimore, but this is now a team like you, Keaton Mitchell. Who the hell is Keaton Mitchell? For God's sake. Gus Edwards has 2 touchdowns. Okay, we've heard of him, but he's kind of their goal line back. Keaton Mitchell is, East Carolina, I believe?
Yep, UDFA. They were very high on him, but he was injured and wasn't able to actually be available to play until last week.
So, I mean, they absolutely bullied the hell out of the Seahawks, ran for 300 yards. This is where, when you start talking about what the main focus was in the offseason for Andrew Berry and beefing up that defensive line, and it's, to improve the run defense, you're going to get that test. And the other thing is, as we know, with Lamar Jackson, you can be in your gaps, you can be disciplined, and this is the one guy, like I forget who we were talking about a while ago, but there's fast, there's like straight line speed, and then there's like the slippery, and he's got it all.
He's got both, yeah.
He's incredible.
Yeah, he's definitely got both.
But in terms of stopping the run, I mean, no bigger challenge than coming up Sunday against the Ravens.
Yeah, and that's what kind of shocked me about their game last week was, the Todd Monken offense was supposed to be a significant shift away from the Greg Roman option. We can attack you from any angle on the ground, but we can't throw the ball worth a damn type of approach. Now they can throw the ball. Lamar threw it all over the yard against the Lions. He's had like kind of an up and down season, but he hasn't really made a ton of mistakes. He does have like an ugly interception every once in a while, but I think it's just because he kind of plays fast and loose. That's just who he is.
Mm-hmm.
I did not expect them to suddenly be able to run the football like they did. That's just not an element that we really saw from them. Gus Edwards is a hard runner. That credit to the front office there for identifying him and implementing him into an offense that he was not the lead back, but in the last 2 years has had to become the lead back because of injuries to J.K. Dobbins. He has, he's consistent, but it's more about the group and how they can attack you from 900 different ways, and it starts with Lamar Jackson. Now, the last time that the Browns and Ravens played, they totaled on the ground a grand total of 131 rushing yards and 165 passing yards. They were very balanced. But if we fast forward to this game that they just played on Sunday and we look at the difference between those numbers, I can tell you right now that the Ravens, it was very lopsided in the rushing category to the tune of 298 rushing net yards. 298. You realize the NFL record for a single game is 299. Adrian Peterson by one player. They did it as a team, 1 yard short. That's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. The Browns are very good against the run statistically. I don't think visually they're as good as the numbers say. And that's going to be the problem.
Okay, and that's okay. I've been thinking the same thing. So you said it, so we'll blame you more because I'm not. I don't. My shoulders aren't broad enough to.
I might need the neck brace when we're done, though.
Nah, I've got business to take care of.
You got a date in court, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh-huh.
It's not that I think the Browns are good against the run. Are they dominant against the run? Are they? Well, this is where with Baltimore, this is where this is their DNA. Without trying to sound cheesy, this is what they do. Even when Todd, like you said, Todd Monken comes in, and I laugh now, and I know some of the analysts out there did say this. There were many more kind of going the opposite way, but there were a few out there that were like, look, if you people think that Todd Monken's just coming in and Baltimore's just going to completely just lose who they are or they have been, they're not. I mean, that's going to be a part of it. But at the end of the day, it's their bread is buttered by lining up and running the ball and taking your soul. Now, are there interchangeable parts? Have they lost some guys? Sure. J.K. Dobbins goes down. Now, the Browns have improved, but I feel like the Ravens, this is kind of just what they do, and they're very comfortable at it. I don't know if the Browns are as comfortable as the Ravens are on the offensive side of the ball as far as getting up there and
No. The reason for that, at least from what I've seen, the reason for that is because you don't have Nick Chubb, but more importantly, it's because you got to give credit to Jerome Ford for the runs that he's pulled off. He's not the same player. His vision is not on the same level.
Just dances a little bit.
Just a little bit too much.
Not a lot, just a little bit.
Just a little bit too much. You can be a one cut back, and you can be, a burst type of guy, and he's kind of neither. He's in between there, where the one cut that made Nick Chubb so good is he'd see the hole, hit it. Sometimes he'd run to a blocker or whatever, but he was decisive. And
it's like watching Travion Henderson the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, just take off.
Yeah.
Find the gaps and take off. Chubb was always very good at being able to get through that hole before it closed because it's only open for a split second. It's a very short window. You can see it when you watch the game where the holes are, and then Ford takes just a half beat more to find it, and it takes what Nick Chubb would make a 25, 30, 50-yard run, ends up being a 4-yard run for Jerome Ford. Now, 4 yards is still good. Do that 3 times in a row, that's a first down. But this Browns offensive line has already dealt with enough injuries that it's just not super consistent. I mean, you lost Jack Conklin. Jed Wills is out now. So you're playing with 2 backup tackles. You lost Ethan Posick for a little bit at center early in the season. You saw how that kind of affected them detrimentally. So I'm not confident in this Browns team being able to do that, to own time of possession on the ground, to kind of win the battle up front. And I don't mean to sound like a Debbie Downer, but I just look at this matchup and I think it's going to be really difficult. Not that it's impossible by any stretch of the imagination, because I think these teams are closer than we realize, but it's going to be an extreme challenge. It's going to be night and day different from what they dealt with against Arizona. Arizona, they dominated at the point of attack.
Yeah.
They were better in every phase. It was a walk in the park. This is going to be the opposite of a walk in the park this Sunday.
All right, because I want to get into the meat and potatoes of what's going to happen on Sunday for the Browns to make this happen, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. Before we do that, let's put a bow on the Arizona game. Hey, they had to get it done. They did get it done in fine fashion. The defense was fantastic. Dalvin Tomlinson had a career day. It was great to see. It was also great to see, a big relief to see Deshaun Watson put together a much better second half and just more comfortable, more confident second half than he was in the first half. But with that said, our numbers that matter, and we'll start with number 4.
Oh.
The number 4.
This happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
I put a number and I think about it literally, and then I look at it the next day and I go, oh, that's that guy's jersey number. 4, the number of the Browns wins.
You're not fooling me.
I swear, I'm never thinking that far. This is why I'd be a terrible comedian. I'm never thinking about the underlying stuff. I trip and fall into it. 4 is the number of Browns wins with Deshaun Watson as a starter this season. They're 4-1 with him. They're 1-2 without him, and that's without him playing anywhere near expectation, really, for the most part. So that's encouraging.
Okay, next number that matter, and before I get into this, and I'm kind of give it away here, but that's all right. So our buddy Anthony Kastrovitz, Bohm, we've had him on, and I've known him for a long time. I'm sure Shook has as well. Nobody loves a good pun like Castro, and he's very good at them. So I'm reading our buddy Nick Shook from NFL.com and NFL Networks, his write-up, his takeaways from the Browns win over Arizona, and I see that the Browns harassed Clayton Tune to the tune of 7.
Yes.
To the tune of Clayton tune of 7
yes.
sacks.
And that was also an unintended pun, which I did put in parentheses. I don't know if it made the final copy.
But see, and adding that in parentheses to me reinforced that you did know it.
I was aware of it after I typed it, yes. Did I intend it?
But I mean,
No.
when after you typed it, after you saw it, you had to be like, oh,
No, I went, oh, God. We're going with it anyway.
it's just amateur hour. What the hell?
I am a professional. Season high 7 sacks of Clayton Tune. How many people do you run into with the last name Tune? It's got to be the only one I know of.
I kept thinking he was Charlie Tuna. That's what I kept calling him.
There was Al Toon, the old receiver. His son,
Toon.
Nick Toon. Yeah, but spelled differently, right?
Right, yeah.
Nick Toon, who played at Wisconsin. I thought was funny because on Nickelodeon they call the cartoons Nicktoons, and I was like, oh, is that like an unfortunate naming? Like, oh, you named your kid Nick Toon? Do you know what you did to it? But having said that, my youngest sister's name is Brooke. Brooke Shook, and they knew what they were doing.
Brooke Shook.
Yeah, and they
I
knew
never
what they
thought
were
about
doing.
that.
Yeah.
Wow. Shout out to Brooke Shook.
Yeah.
All right, we talked about this guy earlier. Numbers that matter from this shutout of the Arizona Cardinals, 27-zip. 2.5. Man, did he have a good game. And that is
Dalvin Tomlinson, who led the team with 2.5 sacks. It was the most sacks by a Browns player not named Myles Garrett since Olivier Vernon in Week 11 of the 2020 season.
There's your name. All right, little blast from even Bohm's nodding his head. He likes that.
Oh, yeah.
Olivier Vernon.
I loved Olivier when I was with the team. He was a great guy. And they have missed that element opposite Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
I think they have it in Zadarius Smith. But to see the defensive interior cause those problems. And the funny thing is, one of Tomlinson's sacks was, you saw it live, and then you saw it on the replay. I'm sitting there watching with my fiance, and she's like, whoa, like a defensive tackle just got a sack? And I go, yeah, watch. He runs away from Myles Garrett right into it. Like, that's caused by Myles Garrett. He should get some credit for that. That's how good he is.
I loved hearing, I'll be honest with you, I loved hearing Amari Cooper, talk about his buddy, obviously playing different sides of the ball, but he's like, hey, that's Bama, baby. He's like, I'm glad that people are starting to see exactly what he can do. I mean, here's the thing, though. He was a huge signing. I mean, literally.
A huge signing that a lot of detractors were like, yeah, he sucked in Minnesota. Enjoy him. And I was like, have you seen the Browns' defensive interior? I still think it's going to be an upgrade, and he has been.
Yeah. And he's got, and as we'll talk about here in a moment, he and his buddies there have a big test coming up on Sunday. They'll have to do it all over again. Next number that matters is 16, Nick Shook. 16.
Yeah, 16 years since the Browns' last shutout, which, as we mentioned, was Week 15 of the 2007 season. The Blizzard Bowl at Cleveland Browns Stadium. It was then named that. It is again named that. I don't anticipate any snow in Baltimore this weekend, but that was the last time the Browns shut out an opponent. And honestly, in the fourth quarter of that game, I was like, come on, guys. Don't let them drive down here and score now. You got to get a shutout. It's been the last time you got a shutout, I didn't even have my driver's license yet.
I think at that point, aren't they cognizant of that? Like, I'm not.
Jim Schwartz had to be. I guarantee you he was. Even when they put the backups in, there were still a few starters in there.
Yeah.
Still a few guys in there.
Yeah. Well, how do you get a shutout? You do this to the Arizona Cardinals. Our next number is 24.
So this was shocking because, part of the process on Sundays is, I talked to some of our researchers and just asked for,
I had to read this one again.
Yeah, any sort of context or any nuggets that came from that game that are interesting to the reader. Then we always throw one in at the end. Sometimes I'll mix it into what I read about. He goes, oh, man, I got a ton of good stuff from this game because of how dominant the Browns' defense was in that game. But I was surprised because 24 of the Cardinals' 48 plays went for either 0 or negative yards, which is like an insane thing to consider. Wow. Like, imagine every other play you run, you get 0 or negative yards. Like, that is demoralizing. That is absolutely crushing.
That's almost where you just want to. You wish there was like some kind of 10-run rule.
Yeah, I was watching the end of the fourth quarter, going, "Please, running clock." I know we don't do this in the NFL, but you need a running clock. Like, this has been over for a long time. But then I come to find out it's the third time the Browns have done that this year.
It's crazy.
They held opponents against Tennessee. They failed to gain a yard on 50% or more of their plays, and against Pittsburgh in week 2.
I did not realize Pittsburgh.
Yeah, because
right.
if you think, other than the big, I don't even want to call them explosive plays, more like breakdowns or disasters, mistakes on the Browns' part, the Steelers' offense didn't do anything either.
Wow, 24 of 48 Cardinals offensive plays went for 0 or negative yards, which is, like you said, mind-boggling enough. But then to have that be the third time they've done that, and they've only played 8 games.
Yeah.
It gives you a glimpse of how dominant they can be. All right, wrapping up numbers that matter. We got a couple more here. 58. That
was the total yards allowed by the Browns defense, which is remarkable in itself.
Weren't we like kind of just floored when it was Tennessee in 94, was it? Tennessee, 94 total yards?
Yeah. I think it was 94, right around there. Yeah, it was in the 90s. And we're like, wow, under 100. But the thing is like, and I hate to be the Debbie Downer, the Johnny Raincloud here, but we were touting
Johnny Raincloud.
We were touting these numbers, after that Tennessee game, and then the Ravens went right past it. I was like, oh, they haven't allowed 300 yards, and we've seen them allow 300 yards since. I think Indianapolis blew right through it. So it's not, you can't bank on it. It's not as reliable as death and taxes, but it does happen enough that you're like, that could be a factor.
Boom, I'll be stealing Johnny Raincloud, just FYI. Yeah, that's because
I don't blame you.
I'll use a negative net every now and then, but I kind of run out of, because people say that's where I say, like, Nick and I are scared. Scary enough, but we're kind of on the same page on a lot of things, and that's one of them. Like, not that I want to be negative, but like I try to be more realistic than anything.
That's why I like
feel
to
my
say we're
job
cynical.
is more about being realistic than a cheerleader. Oh, I'll cheerlead too. I mean, but I've got to be more
I'm
realistic.
not going to lie to you.
Yeah. And therefore, I'm sorry to be Johnny Raincloud.
Too much emphasis.
Oh, that hurt my neck.
Oh.
All right. Yeah. 107.5. What do you got, Nick?
That is Deshaun Watson's passer rating on Sunday. That is the second straight 100-plus passer rating game in a full start. And the caveat there is that he hasn't completed a full start since week 3 prior to Sunday. So he's only had like 4. Half of them have been 100-plus passer rating games.
Asterisk. All right, so that is the numbers that matter from the Arizona game, and we put that to bed, and we officially get ready for Baltimore. We've already talked about it a little bit because, hey, it's that big. All right, Nick Shook, NFL.com, NFL Network. I'm Chico Borman. It is week 9 of the Bold Ball Breakdown. It is a huge, huge showdown in Baltimore this Sunday, 1 o'clock. The Ravens are steamrolling opponents. Just absolutely embarrassed a pretty good Seattle team that the Browns lost to last week, 37-3, and the Ravens just had their way. I want to start with the Browns defense against the Ravens offense here. And if you're Jim Schwartz, because it sounds like, oh, well, you just, hey, you crowd that line of scrimmage. Immediately when somebody hears like, well, they just run the ball, they run the ball, they run the ball. You crowd that line of scrimmage, but this is where Lamar comes in. This is where, they'll play the eye games with you like Kansas City will and other teams will try to do. If you're Jim Schwartz, what is priority number 1 as you are getting ready for the Baltimore Ravens?
Put them in behind the sticks. Put them behind the sticks. You got to get stops on first and second down. Discipline is going to be important because they can play action. They can build out of the play action almost instantly because of what they did last week. At least in terms of like reputation, you have to respect the run as soon as you take the field. I think that's important. I think you have to stop the run, limit what they can do on first and second down, so that Lamar has to be a magician, because this Browns team has been pretty good on third down for most of this year. They relish those opportunities, I think, and to be able to stop a guy like Lamar Jackson, they would enjoy that. You don't want to give them 3rd and 4, because in 3rd and 4, they can do anything. They can play action. They can keep it with Lamar. They can run an option. They can hand it off to Gus Edwards. They can throw a swing pass, a drag underneath to Zay Flowers. They can do anything. All the options are on the table at 3rd and 4. But 3rd and 10 gets a little bit tougher. Where's Mark Andrews? Find him. Keep Zay Flowers from a catch-and-run opportunity. Make sure Lamar doesn't get out of the pocket and take off.
Is this Keaton Mitchell? Is he good out of the backfield? I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
He's played one game of significance.
I mean, like, I'm trying to
Sunday.
go back and look at his East Carolina stats. Is he a guy that you have to, I mean, the other thing is he had some long runs. I mean, he had some chunk plays.
Yeah, he had 9 carries for 138, so you're going to get a big pop. Like, his touchdown run was 40 yards. He had a few of those. So I might be a fool for this, but I'm not super concerned about that. I'm more concerned about the system. Like, I'm not worried about because Justice Hill's a good runner too. I love Justice Hill. Loved him since he was in college.
Yeah.
Everybody there can beat you. It's just a matter of being disciplined enough to prevent that situation. The best way to give yourself the best opportunity to win on the defensive side of the football is to put the offense behind the sticks. Like, it sounds overly simplistic, but with this team, it's especially true because the margin's going to be slim.
If you go back to the first matchup, and I mean, speaking of caveats and asterisks and all that, that was the game. Okay, we're expecting Deshaun Watson to play. This is what started this whole thing. And then about 2 hours before, wait a minute, he can't go. And now it's DTR. And it just seemed like everybody was off.
Yeah.
Do you think that on the defensive side of the ball, like that, I mean, everybody, clearly Baltimore did what they had to do. But do you think that kind of affected everybody where it just wasn't anybody's best effort?
Yeah, I think it's a game that's tough to judge because of how it went. First off, you're shocked that your quarterback's not going to play. you got to get past that emotionally. But DTR was shocked. I mean, he was overwhelmed. He was not ready for that situation at all. And you can't blame him. First start comes out of nowhere. And I also kind of blame us. I blame the build-up to that game a little bit because, and I felt like this at the time, week 4, we were like, this is a huge game. It's week 4. Like, it's a huge divisional game, and both teams came in with winning records and everything else. But I just was like, man, there's so much to sort out. This is such a long season. Whereas we talk about this one, you're like, it's a huge matchup. And in my head, I'm like, is it? And then I was like, no, it actually really is. Now it really is because Baltimore's 7-2, the Browns and the Ravens and the Browns, the Steelers, and the Bengals are all 5-3. Like, you win this game, you're 6-3. The Ravens are 7-3. You're tied head to head. You're a half a game back. Like, everything suddenly matters a lot more. So it is a big matchup. But I think that it's tough to judge what happened in that game that week because your quarterback was not playing, and it was a shock to everyone except me, honestly. And I'm not saying I'm like some, you're
Nostradamus.
fortune teller.
It's all right, yeah.
That's not me. But like I remember being out on Friday night that weekend, talking with some people, including somebody who worked for the team. I was like, he's not playing, and then everyone's like, yeah, he's gonna play. He's definitely gonna play. I was like, no, he's not. He just got a shoulder injury, and there's going to be a bye next week. Why would you play him in this game when it's week 4? And then he didn't end up playing. And then it came back to bite them. I'm not saying that, like I said, I'm not saying I'm a fortune teller or anything else, but it just made a lot of sense for him not to play. And yet everybody thought, including the Browns staff, thought he was going to play. So they were all blindsided by it. That emotional part does matter. It does not explain the entirety of the game. What happened in that game was they turned the damn ball over.
Okay, I've gotten this question a lot, and if I'm getting it a lot, I'm sure you have as well. And it could be one of those, hindsight's 20/20, Chico. But did the Browns err in not immediately just saying, like, put him on IR, he misses the next 4 games? And
well, I think you're dealing with a somewhat unique set of circumstances because he only played half a season last year.
Right.
We spent months talking about what is he going to be. It all depends on him. And then after week 3, said, do you need some help there?
I think I'm all right. Just that numbness in my fingertips.
Yeah, a lot of nerves go up in that area, Everybody was waiting for Deshaun Watson to play. They needed to see him prove that he could be that guy. That's a very full water bottle, too.
I don't know why it was so full.
Yeah, well, air pressure. Yeah. And then, so, like, I understand why they wanted to be like, hey, play. And the doctor said he could play, and then his faculties weren't there functioning. We talked about that ad nauseum. So I understand why they didn't do that. But when he got injured the next time, which was what, week 6? Or he couldn't play again in week 6, right? Then at that point, you're like, we may be past the point of no return, and we can't put him on IR now, right, but we should have put him on IR. So hindsight, this is a perfect example of hindsight being 20/20. Absolutely. But, hey, he's playing now, and he got through a game healthily, and I was cringing every time he took a hit, and it's not going to be 100%, but it's better. It's better than what you had before.
Okay. So and that's a nice lead into the offense now, which is going to be extremely important, obviously, in the Baltimore Ravens, against the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday. So one of the things that Seattle became, which, you never want to be I don't care who you're playing, how good or bad your opponent is, you never want to be this, but Seattle became one-dimensional because Baltimore shut down Kenneth Walker right away. I don't have to tell you, you've studied a lot more about this game than I have. You become one-dimensional on offense, and you're very easy to defend, and you're making life hell for your quarterback. That's exactly what happened to Geno Smith. So I guess the first thing that's imperative is, yes, the Browns have to have that balance. They have to be able to run the football. How difficult is that going to be against this Baltimore team?
Well, I mean, it happened to the Indianapolis Colts in week 6 against Jacksonville, and they lost by 17 points in a blowout, and it was actually worse than that. It's happened to the Buffalo Bills in a number of different games this year, including kind of on Sunday night against the Bengals, and it's really the story of their season is that they can't run the ball. So much that people will make an argument that use the short passing game as your running game to open up the deep shots. It's like, no, it's still not the same. I think that it's going to be vitally important for the Browns to be able to establish some sort of balance. I don't think it can be the Jerome Ford show. I think it's got to be the committee show. Kareem Hunt has quietly been pretty good.
I think Pierre Strong's been pretty decent.
And that was going to be my next point. I really like Pierre Strong. I love him as an off tackle type of guy.
Yeah,
a perimeter guy who can also hit a burst against a weaker front. A 6-man box, that type of thing. You just go right through there with a speed guy who's kind of a slasher. I think they have the tools to be able to do it. It's just, can you block it up well enough? Can you find yourself in the situations that you can do that? Because we've seen what happens when Kevin Stefanski tries to establish the run, and it doesn't look good. It does not look good at all.
So what is it?
It's first down, off right tackle, gain of 1. Second down, Jerome Ford, inside left, loss of 2. It's now suddenly 3rd and 11. Bad pass where you dial up 3 streaks and 1 route underneath that's running toward the strong side of the defense, and it's a punt.
How concerned are you? We talked about the offensive line. Jed Wills is now out. He joins Jack Conklin. How concerned are you that this offensive line, James Hudson's going to be at left tackle, and along with that, somebody posed the question to us yesterday, like, would you be in favor of moving Bitonio? And okay, good. He had the same reaction I did. See, I'm not
people,
a very yeah. Dang, that's exactly what I said. Exactly what I said.
You can kick from outside to inside a lot better than you can go from inside to outside. Joel
he knows
Bitonio,
offensive line play too, guys. Honestly,
he's been a guard since he was a rookie. He did play tackle in Nevada, but quickly learned that he was a guard. The same thing actually happened to Austin Corbett, who's been with like 4 teams now.
Yeah,
I think he's in Carolina now. And you don't do that. Like, it's not Madden. You can't move your best offensive lineman based on overall rating and just move them outside.
Video game. I think I may have referenced that yesterday.
It's not.
How concerned are you, James Hudson?
I'm more concerned about left tackle than right tackle. I think DeJuan's been up and down, but I think he's got a long road that is going to be very bright for him. James Hudson, I go back to that Week 18 game against Pittsburgh last year where Deshaun Watson was just under constant duress. I mean, harassed the entire game. Okay, and it was not good for anybody. For the Browns offense, for those watching at home, it was bad. It was very bad.
It was bad.
And I'm concerned that they attack that side of the offensive line and he fumbles twice and they find themselves in a similar situation. So that's my biggest worry is left tackle. Not saying that James Hudson can't do it, but I just don't have the trust there. Again, cynic, prove it to me, and he hasn't proven it so far.
Do you want to make a prediction or you want to just wait? Because I know you're going to do it with NFL.com and the network. And
well, actually, you remind me I need to do that today. Usually I send those in on Monday
for.
night, and I forgot.
Give you your to-do list, your honey.
Let's make a prediction. Let's do it. Let's hear yours first.
Okay. Make sure nothing. The wall came down yesterday. I don't want anything else being thrown at me. But I think the Browns. It's a respectable effort. Okay, but. No, I just think Baltimore's rolling right now. I'm going to say...
Or they're due for a loss.
Yeah, I know, and I've toyed with that too. I just don't know. My concern is on the offensive side of the ball. Like, I mean, do I really believe they can establish a running game that doesn't allow Baltimore to do what they did last week to Seattle? I'm not saying to that extent, but that's what I'm like you said, up front, that's my biggest concern with another injury. I'm going to go Ravens 24 and Browns 18.
Okay. I like unorthodox scores because I come to find out in being in this prediction business that like a 22-15 game sounds like crazy because you're like, oh, it should be 21-14. But weird things happen in this sport and you get weird scores all the time.
Scoregami.
There you go. Exactly. So I think.
God love you both.
What'd you say? 22-14?
I said 24 to 18.
24 to 18?
Yeah.
Yours aren't working today.
It's all right, buddy.
That's about right, honestly. 18 points is weird to get to, but it seems right. I'm going to predict a Ravens win. Sorry. If the Browns win, then flame me again.
We'll be dancing.
Flame me again. Put me on Twitter and say I'm wrong. The Chargers just did it to me. Somebody else just did it to me yesterday. It's a tradition unlike any other in NFL social team accounts. Get some new material, by the way. Not you, Browns, but just teams in general. Get some new material. So flame me, but I'm going with the Ravens. I'm going to go. Let's go 20. What did you said 24 to 18?
I said 24-18.
I see memories not
a lot of Dustin Hopkins.
Let's go with 22 to 15. They lose by a touchdown margin.
Okay. But they're in the game. It's a good game.
Yeah. I don't think that, I just found a stat here that the Seahawks had allowed almost 200 yards of rushing in the last 3 games, per game.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that rushing explosion is going to be there this Sunday. I just think that the Browns are going to have a hard time keeping up because I think the Ravens' defense is better than people realize.
Okay. And in the closing moments, again, this is week 9 of the Bold Ball Breakdown. My buddy Nick Shook, NFL.com, NFL Network. I'm Chico Borman. We got Terry Pluto, the great one from the Cleveland Plain Dealer, Cleveland.com, will join us here in just a bit. A couple things I wanted to touch on, though, from around the league, and we talked about it a little bit in the beginning of the show, but I want to circle back here. Teams that we thought, like Miami, it's not that Miami's not a good football team. It's that, okay, as we start, now we're in the month of November, and it won't be long before, okay, hey, you got to go here and play, and it just doesn't seem like their game translates, and I think the numbers seem to back that up. Like 0-6. The last 6 teams they played with a winning record, they're 0-6. It's just Miami's good, probably get in the playoffs, maybe get in the play. Yeah, they'll be in the playoffs. But I just don't. If you're telling me Miami's going to make a long run, I'm not seeing it.
So I'm on the same page as you with that because I had them winning the division, even at like a midseason check-in. And I also don't have them getting the Super Bowl. Like I don't think they're one of the 2 teams that I could see getting the Super Bowl as it stands right now. Those teams are Kansas City and Baltimore. I don't feel great about Kansas City, but I just know that their pedigree, you have to take them seriously. And the Ravens look like one of the best teams in football right now. But Miami's going to be in a position where we're going to have to take them seriously, whether they prove it or not, because their schedule sucks. They're in the bye week now. They come out of it with a game against the Raiders, then they go to the Jets, then they go to Washington, then they face Tennessee at home, then they get the Jets at home. They have the last 3 games are tough. Dallas, Baltimore, and Buffalo. But Buffalo could decide the division if Buffalo can keep pace at this point. What are they? 6-3 right now? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. They could be 11-3 by the time they get to week 16.
They'll get in.
You're taking that seriously, even if they are frauds.
Yeah, I can't see them making a deep run. And now
Tua's healthy, though. That's the biggest thing for me.
True. Yeah, very true. And now the other end of that spectrum is, speaking of guys that are now healthy, the Cincinnati Bengals.
Watch out.
This was one of those, I admit, and we had James Rapine on yesterday, my old buddy in radio, and he's now with Locked On Bengals. And
he's down there, right?
Writing a book, yeah. Did write a book, I should say.
Oh.
And I said to him, like, it felt like it was going to take a while. Like, and by the time, Joey Burrow was able to heal up, they might be, I don't want to say out of it, but might be behind the 8 ball. But then it was like, all of a sudden, that San Francisco game, and then you just saw him over the weekend. He looks like the old Joey Burrow, running, throwing. The Lou Anarumo, who I think is about as underrated a defensive coordinator as you'll find, incredible. This Bengals team is dangerous.
Very scary.
Dangerous.
Very scary. And Browns fans should be bummed that they have the same record because 5-3, they did not like the Browns have scratched and clawed their way to 5-3 and could be better. They're not right now. Like the Bengals are on that trajectory right now where they could end up winning the division. They're that good. If Baltimore takes a step or 2 back, it could be a Ravens-Bengals showdown for the division. The Browns being like, hey, we won in the fight too. We won in too. Their schedule sets up fairly nicely, but they have a big test in the next month. Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, 3 of the next 4 games. In Houston, by the way, which is an interestingly competitive team, a fun team to watch. So the Bengals, watch out. They're just starting to peak, and they're going to be there for the entire season.
All right, last thing I want to throw your way. So the Jets, they look terrible, right? We expect them to. What do you make of this? I mean, I love Rodgers, the quarterback. I do. But it's like, I don't know. They're showing him throwing before the game, and then it just feels like this is going to be his platform to say, see, these magic mushrooms, you guys all make fun of me, but look, I'm back. Is he realistically going to be back in action soon?
I have a hard time. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, right.
And I don't sell Nugenics advertised by Frank Thomas,
The big hurt?
You look good.
The big hurt?
I feel good, too, because I'm taking Nugenics. Like that type I'm not doing that. I don't know. But I have a hard time believing that he will come back at any time this season, save for maybe January. And even then, that would be a medical marvel, a modern miracle. It really would.
I think he loves just the he
loves the attention.
Yeah, he loves that camera. Are you guys?
Why do you think he goes on Pat McAfee's show every week because of that?
Oh boy! All right, Nick Shook, NFL.com, NFL Network. Check him out. We'll do it again next week, which will be week 10 of the Bald Breakdown. But talking about the Browns, talking about the Ravens, always fun, my friend.
Always.
Let's go Browns coming up on Sunday. All right, with that, we don't want to keep him waiting any longer. He is the great Terry Pluto, of course, with Cleveland.com and Cleveland Plain Dealer, has written a lot of books, a lot of those books I have. Nick, I'm sure you have a lot of them as well. And he joins us right now on the Chico Borman Show on the Big Play Sports Network. Terry, how you doing, bud?
I am well, Chico.
I'll tell you what I want to do, if it's okay. We'll get into the Browns here in just a moment. But yesterday, full disclosure, we were supposed to have you on yesterday. News breaks, Guardians Inc., Stephen Vogt to be their manager. Your first impressions, I saw your column, an interesting name that you kind of compared it to, which I'd like for you to share with the listeners out there.
Well, this is, for me, when I was a young columnist, I would just wake up and make up an opinion, even though I didn't know what kind of opinion to have. and I'm very serious. How do you have a really strong opinion, unless you know this guy or, you covered him for years, on how Stephen Vogt's going to do his managing in Cleveland or any other big league team when his coaching experience consists of 1 year as a bullpen coach in Seattle? So what I try to do is shake my sources down. Well, why did Cleveland become enamored with him? Why was he actually considered strong enough of a candidate? He was basically the runner-up to Bob Melvin for the Giants job.
Yep.
And in fact, there was some thought that the Brewers also might come after him once Council's thing became resolved if they didn't keep him. So what was the magic about him? What was that? So that was what I really tried to write about there. And when I was texting with some top people and that, and I said, this guy doesn't have much experience in that. And they go, well, how much experience did Kevin Cash have? And Cash has spent 2 years as a bullpen coach with Cleveland after he's done playing, like Votey was a catcher. And then he got hired by Tampa Bay, which was a big surprise there. And if you look at it, it took a couple of years for him to get going. And he's become one of the top managers in the game. So, that probably is the target they have on the wall. I mean, Dave Ross, who just got fired, he was the guy that took over the Cubs, and I thought he did a decent job, nothing great. He's another guy that came that way. Aaron Boone came out of the TV booth with the Yankees, again, so. I mean, in the end, when these guys don't have a track record, Chico, it's hard to guess. It's hard to know.
How important is, especially with this ball club, collaboration and the leadership? I mean, I know sometimes we talk about it, but then you kind of roll your eyes. But with Tito, I mean, yes, he had that experience, as you wrote about, but he had that innate ability, which hopefully Vogt has too. But let's face it, it's 162 games, and you're dealing with an organization that is very, very well run, but there are going to be some constraints as far as you're not going to go out and get the best players. It's got to be somebody that is collaborative with those guys, with Chernoff and Antonetti and company.
Yes, that's a big part of it. But the other part before we get to the front office with the manager was when the Guardians sat down at the end of the season, they talked about all the different things that Tito brought to the team. One was his ability, and whether he could sit with a billionaire Fortune 500 executive or the clubhouse guy or the security guard or some fan at the casino when he'd be sitting there late at night eating his sandwich, playing some cards, and relate to everybody. I mean, he is a guy. I mean, look, I've been around some really good managers. I mean, my first year covering Major League Baseball was 1979 in Baltimore. I was around Earl Weaver, Hall of Fame manager, the guy that invented basically early Moneyball, the stats. He invented the stats of hitters versus individual pitchers. Until he did it, it was kind of strictly righty-lefty. And he did it, by the way, because he just noticed that he had a light hitting shortstop named Mark Belanger. For whatever reason, Belanger would hit Nolan Ryan. It made no sense, but it did. So he began having PR guys go through things and put together box scores. So, all right, I broke in with him. Then I had in Cleveland, there was Mike Hargrove, who was very, very good. Charlie Manuel was good. Eric Wedge was not. He was really over his head. And I'm sure I'm missing some others along the way. Manny Atka, who was basically the last manager they hired before Tito, came in here. And Manny Atka reminded me of a guy I covered in Cleveland when I was a young baseball writer after Baltimore, Dave Garcia. He was a great third base coach who was a manager and really just was not a great spot for him. That's because the job is so encompassing on different levels. And so what they were looking for was this guy that could relate to all kinds of different people. And when you walk into, Francona always said this, said, sometimes he goes, I get tired about hearing about diversity. Just walk into a baseball locker room.
Yeah.
Because it's not just, there's white guys, Latinos, and some black guys. You also have, some teams have Asians, but when you have a lot of guys from Latin American countries, a Dominican kid is not the same as somebody from Venezuela, somebody from Puerto Rico. They have different cultural things and all that. And so when you have to kind of be a guy that holds out that together, well, they felt that Vogt checked that big box for them, which was leadership and ability to relate to different kinds of people. That's where they started. That's how he got to be pushed near the top of the list right away.
Talking to Terry Pluto here on the Chico Borman Show on the Big Play Sports Network. Of course, you can follow him on Twitter at Terry Pluto if you are not doing so already. All right, as we shift to the Browns here, Terry, I mentioned this to Nick last hour, and I talked about it yesterday also. I had somebody ask me after Sunday's game, let's say that none of the injuries happened to the Browns, like Chubb's back and Conklin, everybody's healthy. Right now, would you sign up for 5-3? And I thought about it, and I said, well, yeah, of course I would. I'm guessing you probably feel the same way. I mean, at 5-3, we almost have to stop ourselves and say, hey, they are 5-3. Kevin Stefanski's done a pretty good job.
Right now, I think it doesn't matter what Stefanski does. You'll never hear Kevin Stefanski and good job in the same sentence from many fans.
No.
Unless it's like, he'll never do a good job. That would be about it. And I'm not a huge Stefanski fan, but fair is fair, Chico, like you said. And then when you factor in, if somebody told you on opening day, you would have 6 quarters of Nick Chubb and you'd have 3 full games of PJ Walker, how would you feel about that?
5-3 is impossible.
Exactly. And as you mentioned, Conklin got hurt, and they've had some other things along the way. And how many good games has Deshaun played? I think one really good one with Tennessee. I thought he was coming around towards the end of Arizona, and that was promising. And he wasn't particularly good against Cincinnati. He was terrible against Pittsburgh. So then, you drop back to 5-3. And then one of the most amazing stats to me is after Chubb has left, nonetheless, now I haven't looked this week, but heading into last week's game, the Browns had the second best rushing team in the NFL with Pierre Strong and Kareem Hunt and Ford, just a bunch of guys. And that has something to do with Stefanski's running schemes and Bill Callahan, the coaching staff. And it's often they want to separate the defense from the offense. And clearly Schwartz is the head coach of the defense, but it's still all under the Cleveland Browns umbrella. And they're, as you said, they're 5-3. Now, we may be having a completely different discussion in a couple of weeks if they lose back-to-back to Pittsburgh and Baltimore and look poorly. But at this point, rolling into those games at 5-3 is promising.
The word you used in your post-game scribbles after the shutout of the Cardinals was relief, as it relates to Deshaun Watson. Why?
Well, they saw him when he tried to play in Indianapolis, and he just threw the ball into the dirt or got it intercepted. And it is a rotator cuff injury. And a rotator cuff, I also wrote a column, and people should check it out, kind of like what's up with Deshaun's arm. And I talked to a top executive. I said, would you explain to me how NFL teams kind of what steps these guys go through. And I said, like they said, Deshaun was medically cleared. He goes, they should never say that. And I go, why not? He goes, because the term medically cleared applies to almost normal people. In other words, yes, he was medically cleared to probably do a normal job, not to play quarterback in the NFL.
Kind of
And he
different.
said, I'm serious. He goes, we don't use it. And he said, that's why, he's medically clear to start practice, or maybe sometimes say he probably won't hurt it anymore. Remember, Baker Mayfield was medically cleared, but he still played like garbage because the left shoulder wasn't very good. And when he went to throw, remember, these guys make a lot of off-balance throws. And so that puts a lot of strain on your arm, and that that's a problem. So number one, then he goes, the second part is you get serious performance clearance. Then it's like you really have a much higher threshold of what it takes for that arm to be able to play in the NFL. You're throwing 30 times, you're being hit. Because a big part, if you watched early in the Indianapolis game, Deshaun was throwing fine in warmups. He gets out there, but all of a sudden here comes a rush and his left shoulder's flying out and he's trying to throw a pass off the back foot, and that arm isn't right and that thing's fluttering like a duck because he was medically cleared, all right, because a normal person doesn't have to do that. So performance clearance is number two. Then he said the third thing is the player comfortable enough to play. And he said that's really, if teams would explain this better, I think it would help, because what ended up, and I'm not a big Watson fan. I hated the trade. I wrote 2 columns before they even made it saying, don't do this, all that.
I remember.
But
yep.
I had to defend Watson on this. Those said he didn't want to play. He wants to play. In fact, that messed up the whole process because we were listening too much to him instead of what their eyes were telling them and maybe what some of the medical reports were.
So you referenced the running game,
Yes.
and it is go back, and if we go back and look at that Seattle game, Baltimore-Seattle, where they just, I mean, that was a behind the woodshed type game. Seattle became very one-dimensional very quickly. They shut down Kenneth Walker, the Ravens did, and boy, we were talking about it last hour also, that they are going to have to be a balanced team against this Baltimore team. And I don't know about you, Terry. I actually thought the defense for the Ravens, I know it's kind of their DNA, but I thought going into the season, like they could have pass rush issues and well, the secondary with Humphrey going down, it's like they haven't skipped a beat.
They're like the Steelers. They're never bad.
Yeah. Yep.
They're just never bad. I mean, maybe they're not great, but they're just never bad. And if you underestimate them, I mean, you should just go ahead and start banging your head against the wall because it's going to hurt. They do figure this thing out. In fact, that's where you want the Browns to be, where you're never bad, you're good most of the time, and you have a shot at being great. That's the kind of franchise that you feel proud to be a fan of. And McDonald, the defensive coordinator, because I remember writing this right before when I heard DTR was going to start that game, that whole messed up situation there. So I would check with somebody I knew in the NFL right before, and I go, well, what about this? Like this kid's being thrown in there. He goes, McDonald disguises his blitzes and coverage so much. He goes, they're going to eat the poor kid alive. And they did. It's not a knock on DTR. It's just like, this is what you run into. You know, Schwartz has got a bigger name, but this guy's reputation is just as big. So we'll see. There's going to be a huge challenge. I mean, I like the fact we're going into these games. They're 5-3. Everybody in the league is like, they're 5-3. What's Baltimore? 6-2 or 7-2? You know, in the division rather.
Yep.
I mean, this is how it ought to be. You know, they always say it's the man's division. Well, good. Let's see how the men play when they face each other.
Yeah, be excited about it. I totally agree with that. A few more minutes with Terry Pluto. Let's flip this because, ironically, yes, it was all about Deshaun Watson. Heck, it's probably going to continue to be about Deshaun Watson. But as far as Andrew Berry was concerned in the offseason, that checklist was all about improving that defense, specifically the run defense. And Dalvin Tomlinson, boy, he had a great game, career game last week. But he is going to be tasked, and his buddies are going to be tasked with stopping this run game that Baltimore has. And it doesn't seem to matter. J.K. Dobbins goes out, doesn't matter. They're going to have to step up. Speaking of challenges, they're going to have to meet that challenge, which right now that run game is dominant for the Ravens.
And Lamar is completing, I think, it's 72% of his passes. He's gotten more comfortable with Todd Monken's offense. It was so funny when Monken was here. I mean, he would do those weekly press conferences, as quote unquote the offensive coordinator, but Freddie Kitchens was calling all the plays or what. It's almost like he'd be just like rolling his eyes. Well, that's what we do. It's like, I mean, he may have been like the guy just delivering the mail. I don't even know what's in the bag. I'm just handing it off. And now we saw later on when he went to the college ranks, then of course, now what he's doing with Lamar. It took a while for them to get going. And that is so hard, Chico, because Lamar, is he going to run it? Is he going to throw it? And clearly the Browns defense, the last time they played Lamar, was not very good. And they really struggled with that. That's another reason you need that offense to be in good gear, maybe keep the defense off the field against Lamar, because he just wears you down. I think if he's on those long drives and sometimes he's running and he's flipping off this weird pass. And of course, then they could always kick a 55-yard field goal on you too. So it's a huge challenge. It's a tough place to play, but I'm glad I'm used to going in there when the Browns are 2-6 and they're on their fourth quarterback. And
we're talking about the draft.
Yeah, the draft and all that stuff. And Thad Lewis is warming up. It's just so this is like great. Let's have at it.
All right, just a couple more minutes, buddy. I just want to get your thoughts on the Cavs. They're finally what we think is whole, healthy for the most part. They go on a 4-game road trip. Your impressions of the Cavs? Just 7 games in?
Right now they're really just kind of scattered. They looked very good, obviously, against Golden State. I mean, that was refreshing, but you could tell there's this kind of tug of war with how much do you really want to run. Do you really want to be in the top 10 of taking 3-pointers in the league or not? I say no. I mean, I'm not anti 3-pointer or whatever, but it's not like you have a team loaded with great outside shooters. The heart of the team is still defense. And just because they struggled so much with New York in the playoffs doesn't mean you just throw out what got you to 51 wins. I love how Strus gets in there and gets some rebounds from that small forward spot at 6'5". Yep. That's huge because that's such a great example. And then you could just see, Donovan Mitchell, my Lord, he was great last year during regular season. I think he's better. And Garland, when he's healthy, it's always going to be a thing with Garland because he's a slightly built guy with a history of injuries. But he's such a smart player and, moves the balls around. All of a sudden, Evan Mobley's back getting his dunks again. So I'm really encouraged. I think they could be very good. I want to see more of how they work in the new guys. But I get tired. Well, they're last in pace. Well, I don't want to run up and down and play 125-point games because they will lose more of those games than they'll win. That's not how they're built.
I heard an NBA analyst last night talking about Evan Mobley, and he said, and again, preface it, it's only 7 games in, sure. But he said he expected to see a much bigger leap, a much bigger improvement as far as his shooting. I'm just curious if that resonates with you at all.
I think a big thing for Mobley, is what's your best shot? Where do you want, other than a dunk? What do you want? I don't think he has one. For example, Mitchell, he's got a lot in his bag, but I think he's toughest when he does that crossover dribble and goes to the rim. He's so strong. It's almost impossible to stop him. I remember when the Cavs traded for Mike Fratello told me, he said, Mitchell can get a shot almost any time he wants near the rim. And Fratello does the Clippers. So he saw a lot of Mitchell in the West because I didn't realize how good he was and how strong he was. And Garland has the 3-pointer, especially the one from straight out above the key. And then he has that kind of floater he likes to take. You go down the line. Some guys have their corner 3 shots. I don't know what Evans' shot is. And I think until he has, whether it's a jump hook or something, the offense is going to be a bit of a problem for him. And I don't want to hear, well, he used to shoot 3-pointers. I love Charles Barkley. One time I was like in the playoffs, he goes, I get so tired in this league. It's like any fool could take any sort of foolish shot from anywhere on the court, 3-pointer, and it's just fine. Man, that ain't stupid. That's just foolish. That's downright foolish. And that's because any fool should not be allowed to take a 3-pointer. Every player should not be looked through the prism of, oh, you better learn how to make 3-point shots. I don't want Jared Allen making 3-pointers. I mean, be nice, but I want him blocking shots, and I want Mobley getting some shots in the 8 to 10, 12-foot range, and also be doing his job on defense, and then get some of the big guys in the open court. So that's my thoughts. But I really believe right now he's struggling to say, where do I want the ball?
Interesting. Follow him on Twitter at Terry Pluto. Again, his columns, the scribbles, pre, post, it's just must read. Great stuff as always. Terry, great catching up with you again, and hope to do it again real soon, buddy. Thank you.
Thanks, Chico. It's always fun.
All right. That is, again, the great Terry Pluto. Interesting stuff that he brought up, really, on all three, the Browns, the Cavs, and the Guardians. We're going to touch on some of this when we come back. We'll also play a little fair or foul before we get out of here, too. It's a Chico Borman Show. More to come right here on the Big Play Sports Network. Alrighty, welcome back on a Tuesday afternoon, the Chico Borman Show on the Big Play Sports Network, and glad you could join us. We do it Monday through Friday, each and every day, Monday through Friday, noon to 2. You can follow us live on Twitter at Chico Show CLE, also on YouTube. If you're not subscribing, hit that button that says subscribe, and you'll be all set to go. Also available wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, Apple, and, of course, streaming live on iHeartRadio as well. Good stuff, great stuff, as always, from Terry Pluto, who, I've said this before, there's only one other guy that I can compare him to when it comes to, like, needing to see and read, feel like I'm missing something if I don't read him, and that's Hal Lebovitz. Who, always had the Sunday column, the big, huge Sunday column. And when I was working in Erie, PA. I had to make sure I got it delivered. I think it cost me like $8, but it was like the best $8 per week I always spent. And that's Terry now. I mean, now we've, gone to the internet but everything he writes is just fantastic. Good insight. The other thing I like about Terry is he's not afraid to say, you know what? I don't know the answer to this question. I'm going to call somebody. Too many times I think, and I'll raise my hand on this, although I hopefully I've gotten better at this. You try to, I know it. Well, sometimes you don't know it. Sometimes you need to ask, and Terry does that, and he's been in the business for how long? But as far as the Browns are concerned, I don't think there's any question. Let's go back to, while I don't have a good feeling about this game, I do want to go back to, this is fun. Now, granted, it's a stressful fun, but this is the fun that we've been waiting for. This is the stressful fun that we've been waiting for. Not, well, it's November, the Browns are out of it. Who do you think the quarterback's going to be? Should they go quarterback? Should they go defense? No. You're 5-3. And I mean, it has been a roller coaster. There have been plenty of highs. I think about that Cincinnati win week 1, even though Joe Burrow was not what he is today. I mean, the Browns dominated them. And then, of course, again, right back down, and not just losing to Pittsburgh, but you lose Nick Chubb, who this city was in it was like a dark cloud for the entire week. And they lose to Pittsburgh, but then, well, you're going to jump up and you're going to go ahead and annihilate Tennessee, and then Deshaun starts playing well, and oh, wait a minute, hey, and then he gets hurt, and Conklin's already hurt, and so you're just saying to yourself, man. But at the end of the day, kids, the Cleveland Browns are 5-3. The Baltimore Ravens are basically a runaway freight train right now. Are they playing that well, or is he just exaggerating? No, they're playing that well. I mean, they might be the best team in the AFC right now. You look around. Shook was talking about it in the Bold Ball Breakdown in hour 1. The Buffalo Bills, not only are they dearly missing Tre'Davious White, but they're also missing Matt Milano, key on that defense. But then on offense, it's like they just don't believe in a running game. I think they've got a good one in James Cook, Dalvin's brother. I know he's not the 225, 230-pound bell cow, but he can run the football. It's just weird what's going on there. Miami, we mentioned that stat. Last 6 games they played against winning teams, they're 0-6. The Jets obviously had, Rodgers go down week 1. And you look out west, and Kansas City, while they're leading and they're probably going to run away with that division, they've got some issues too offensively. The Chargers are the Chargers again, even though you keep waiting for things to change. So here are the Browns. I mean, they're right in the thick of things. But this game, okay, well, we say every week it's a huge game. But I think with everything the way it's played out to now, and the way Baltimore is playing, the fact that they are, I mean, they're humming right now. They absolutely destroyed a pretty good Seattle team. They made Kenneth Walker irrelevant in no time. And then it was pin our ears back, we're coming after Geno Smith, and they did. It's imperative the Browns are able to run the football. Balance. I mean, yeah, I'm not saying run to set up the pass, however you got to do it, but you got to be balanced. Because if they are able to do Baltimore what they did against Seattle defensively, you're in big trouble. And then I think, on the flip side of that, yeah, Lamar, there's a reason why Lamar is such an X factor. There's a reason why Lamar is an MVP. Is he the quarterback you would want, number one, in the entire league? Maybe not. Maybe so. But what makes him so dangerous and one of one is that he can beat you throwing the football. It doesn't necessarily look pretty all the time, but he's gotten better. But man, he's slippery, he's fast, he has a feel for the game that you can't teach. And when he gets going and he gets in a rhythm, he's really, really hard to stop. Most teams are, most quarterbacks are. But this guy, and with that offense and the way they're playing now, this is why you signed Dalvin Tomlinson. This is why you brought in Shelby Harris. This is why, these are the moves that you made. And now it is week 9. And now, you've got to figure this out. And no, your season's not over if you don't beat Baltimore. But, man, the tune we could be singing come Sunday late afternoon, I mean, it would be a huge, huge win, and one that I think these fans desperately deserve. Will it happen? I wish I could tell you that I believe they're going to do it. I don't. But, man, if they do, I'm going to be dancing on this desk.
Chico, I feel like as a Browns fan, even if you don't win this game, you can still walk out of that stadium with your head held high if you just put up a good battle, because they're absolutely destroying everyone in their path right now.
Yeah, and normally I would agree with that, Bohm. It's not a bad point. I would agree with that, with the exception of it's Baltimore, and there's just people, we know how, and justifiably so, how people feel about them, and the fact that they embarrassed you on your you're right. I just think with Baltimore, it's different because of everything that's included in this rivalry. So anyway, good stuff. We're going to talk more about this as the week goes along. Obviously, a huge one. Browns back on the practice field tomorrow to take on the Ravens on Sunday. Terry also mentioned the Guardians tapped their new manager, Stephen Vogt. Let me give Bohm a shout-out because he was very, very happy and proud of his pun. Guardians, this is what Bohm wrote for the show intro on Twitter, the Chico Borman Show, at Chico Show CLE. It says, Chico is live. Nick Shook is back for another Browns Bold Ball breakdown, joined by Terry Pluto at 1. Guardians cast their vote, VOGT. And by the way, it just happens to be voting day. It's crazy how things work out, Boom. But nice
pun
work.
Very much intended.
Yeah, nice work out of you.
Thanks.
So Stephen Vogt, and Terry telling it like it is, and he's very, very good at that. Yeah, I don't think anybody should be jumping or is jumping, for joy, like, oh, we got Stephen Vogt, yes. But the people that are making, and there are some out there, and some people, because this is just what they do when it comes to the Guardians. There's no move that they like. There's nothing whatever. It's their bridge to football, which is fine. That's your opinion. But I thought the Kevin Cash comparison, and if you didn't read Terry's column on this, was very good. This is a guy that was wanted by. This isn't just Stephen Vogt. Where did he? He's on everybody's radar, and I like it. I like it. Does he have a lot to prove? Certainly he does. And you can bet the first time there's a tactical error, there's he should. But, Tito is a Hall of Famer, and Tito got that every day from people that thought they knew much more than he did when it came to, filling out a lineup card. So you're going to second guess every manager, whether it's, Earl Weaver, Casey Stengel, Terry Francona, or Stephen Vogt in his first year. But I think the hire, I like it. I think it just fits, I guess is the best way to say it. Cavaliers, I thought Terry brought up a great point, and I hadn't heard this with Evan Mobley, because I can't remember which analyst it was, but they said, I expected to see more from Evan Mobley offensively in terms of his jumper. He supposedly was working really hard on that jumper in the offseason, didn't play for Team USA, and I just haven't seen it. Now, again, it's 7 games, but Terry said, I wonder if he has a favorite shot, where he likes the ball, where I never thought of it that way, but everybody. I think everybody has that. If you're in the NBA, college, whatever, there's probably a certain space on the floor where you like to go. You feel comfortable more so than others to, shoot the ball. Right now, through 7 games, that has been a disappointment. Only 7. But I will say a lot of folks, and I don't think they're wrong in doing this, have said that for the Cavaliers to take that leap, which means getting out of the first round this year, and, it's not just, Evan Mobley's got to shoot the ball better. It's toughness. It's all sorts of things. But Evan Mobley taking that leap, but that leap for Evan Mobley is in large part tied to him shooting the basketball and to him shooting the basketball consistently. So I thought what Terry said there about, maybe you just, it's more like simplifying it. Like, hey, you know what? Where do you like it? Where do you want to be at on the floor? Where are you most comfortable on the floor? And those are things that will get worked out. Again, these guys have not had their starting lineup together healthy. I think maybe once, twice. Just a ton of injuries, and right now it appears everybody's a go. Isaac Okoro, we don't think the knee's serious, but as far as like your starting lineup and certainly the bigs and your backcourt, you've got those guys. So it'll be interesting. They got a 4-game road swing. It's going to begin in OKC coming up tomorrow. So anyway, great stuff from Terry Pluto. We will take a quick break. When we come back, we'll play a little fair or foul. We will wrap things up. It is a Tuesday. It's the Chico Borman Show. More to come right here on the Big Play Sports Network. All righty, welcome back. Next sore. So just give me a minute. I'm sorry. Give me a minute. Try to. Had that mishap yesterday. Boom. The wall came tumbling down. I'm sure I'll be all right. Give it a few days, weeks, months. But yeah. So we're. Boom. I didn't have a chance to say this to you, but. You seemed very in the clip looking back on it because I didn't have a chance to view it until after. You appeared to be taking great delight. Almost like it's almost like when in A Christmas Story when the leg goes up on the window. And the mom, of course, is just, petrified. But the dad, it's a prize. It's a lamp. And you just see Ralphie look up. He's like, yeah, statue. That's what Bohm looked like. While this thing's about to fall on my head, Bohm's like, yeah, timber.
Just shock and awe, Chico. Shock and awe.
Yeah, that was...
I was like too astonished to even say, oh, look out. I was like, I can't believe this is happening right now.
One of the wilder moments we've had on the show. But, like I said, don't feel sorry for me. I'm sure this thing is nothing. It's probably just a few vertebrae that, need fixing. And,
only a little bit concussed.
Yeah, just... What's that song, that thing that Misny says, you know what I do?
He makes them pay?
Yeah. Well, that's what I just thought of that randomly.
With the one eyebrow?
Yeah, like The Rock.
Like The Rock.
You know what I do? Oh. All right. Without further ado, it is time as we wind down. What do you now explain? Okay, explain the VCU picture.
Yeah.
Brian.
So I am not like that. Was not me. I didn't do that. This anti-Virginia Commonwealth University poster. I do not endorse this sentiment, nor do I wish to express that towards Virginia Commonwealth University. I'm assuming that's VCU.
Well, I'm
that's
guessing. I'm guessing they're not. But we don't know who that. Is it?
I mean, Ryan was in earlier filming with Fontana.
Hoops started yesterday.
I know. Ohio State played Oakland. Just.
By the way, did you hear the Oakland coach's press conference?
No, I heard Paul Keels on the broadcast though.
All right, I know.
Last time we talked about Paul Keels, though, disaster happened. So
yeah, so we don't.
We'll leave that one there.
Oakland,
what did he say?
Oakland's head coach said, because they were talking about how the zone frustrated him. He goes, "Yeah, I think it's clear that our zone it frustrated him, but I think more than anything, it's like we knew what was coming. We knew what plays they were about to run." And then he smiles. And he goes, "Oh, I could make a comment about Michigan right now, but I won't." And then and the whole room laughed. I mean, it was hilarious.
Yeah, I did see that quote on Twitter. I didn't realize. Yeah.
I'm going to say, my guess is, real quick, I'm going to say that VCU being on the wall has something to do with hoops last night, whether they played UC, Kent State, maybe. I don't know.
Ryan's a UC guy, so I'm. That's a great point.
We have Kent State. I'm gonna say that it's hoops related.
Yeah, if I wasn't running this segment right now,
we don't know if it could be much deeper. It could have something to do with the Big Hat Show, sweet googly moogly. So we will get to the bottom of it. But boom, right now, actually, I'm gonna be looking for it while you do fair or foul. So go ahead.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Great. So. First, I wanted to bring up some interesting comments from Stephen A. Smith in regards to the Wolverines sign stealing scandal. By the way, an all-time troll out of a totally random university. I want to say it was like Northern Illinois or something, right? And they were like welcoming people that were at the game, and they welcomed Connor Stallions. They said, "Welcome, Connor Stallions," and then underneath it in parentheses, probably. So all-time troll out of. I hope it was Northern Illinois because it was. I want to give proper credit there. But no, so Stephen A. Smith with some interesting comments, and everyone's been debating, Chico, on what the punishment should be for this thing. And the investigation is still currently taking place, so we don't know all the details or any of that. with that said, though, Chico, Stephen A. said that U of M should be suspended from any possibility of a college football playoff appearance for as long as this investigation is underway. Now, sure, I guess I'd love it, but to me that seems implausible. Do you think that
Wait,
is fair?
hang on a second. That doesn't make sense because the investigation, for as long as the first of all, it's really not an investigation per se. My understanding. Well, go ahead with your question, then I'll explain.
Well, I mean, that was the question. That Stephen, is it fair or foul for Stephen A. to be saying that U of M should be suspended from college football playoffs until this investigation is completed?
Well, but what if they? I guess what I'm having a hard time saying it sounds more like what he's saying is they should not play football until it's resolved. Not you shouldn't play the football playoff because the football playoffs aren't going to start for a while. They'll probably have a resolution or at least a discipline come down before then. That's why I'm confused. Foul is what I'll say. My understanding is because again, we said this at the very beginning. There really wasn't a quote unquote an investigation because there really didn't need to be because all the evidence was right there. Normally in an NCAA investigation and this is why this is unprecedented. Like I said, usually it's okay, we're looking into your recruiting practices, we're looking into money or whatever. And the investigation is ongoing. You have to cooperate with the NCAA. It was just Big Ten. I mean, this has been Tony Petitti. And my understanding is he met with Michigan's president on Sunday, I think it was. And I think the president is saying, the president, by the way, just a little side note, is a big fan of Jim Harbaugh. Because not everybody is in Ann Arbor, but she is. And apparently they're saying, like, hey, give us due process here. So Petitti is basically saying, like, okay, look, we can at least give you 48 hours to respond and tell us what. But, again, Michigan's Colin Stallions just resigned or quit or got fired, whatever you want to say. That's what they're going with. I think it's pretty clear. Like, there's no need to have this really continue. I mean, the reality is, Bohm, if Michigan doesn't play in the postseason, and I don't really want that to happen, the reason I don't is because, I mean, it's almost, it doesn't benefit the Big Ten. It obviously doesn't benefit Michigan. I don't think it benefits Ohio State. I don't think it benefits... And, you know, for those out there that are going, well, it's Ohio State, it's everybody. I mean, there's 11 ADs that have just been nonstop in Tony Petitti's ear. And why it's telling, I think, for a variety of reasons, but it's kind of like cheating in baseball. Well, I know that their pitcher's scuffing the baseball. Well, I also know that my pitcher's scuffing the baseball. So if I say something about their pitch, so I'm going to let it go. When you have 11 people, 11 ADs basically saying, oh, no, this is ridiculous, it's bad. They're putting the heat on Tony Petitti, and they're basically saying, you know what, we got nothing to hide, because it is. I mean, they know that's what's coming, is you're going to have to be gold standard times 10, but they're really angry about it. So I don't know. I mean, I have no freaking idea what will or even what should. There's got to be discipline. What that is, I have no freaking clue.
Yeah, and to me, and you mentioned, like, there's not really much of an investigation. They have all the evidence already. To me, I think the one thing that needs to still be figured out is Jim Harbaugh's involvement. And I think that's what the NCAA still doesn't have, like, definitive proof of. So that's something that I'm sure they're still looking into.
But see, and okay, what's interesting about that is that the Big Ten, this is why they're, like, they don't, we talk about it in the form of court of law. And, of course, there's that out there, too, that maybe they would sue. And then, you know, I don't know, in a court of law, could they give enough reasonable doubt, as they call it? I knew that Law and Order and stuff would play out.
I'm not a lawyer, but I've seen one on TV.
But the plausible deniability and, hey, you know what, you don't have overwhelming evidence that can put him and Stallions together. Yeah, I mean, that's probably true, but in just a Big Ten investigation, I mean, let's think about this. Connor Stallions, in all the videos we've seen, he's within 10 feet of either an offensive coordinator, defense coordinator, or Jim Harbaugh. There is no way in hell that somebody can convince me or anybody, especially Tony Petitti, that Connor Stallions is standing on the sideline within arm's length, pretty close, to Jim Harbaugh, and Harbaugh has no clue who this guy is. Like, don't play us for dumbasses. You
He's
know
in
what I
their
mean?
ear, Chico.
What's that?
Connor Stallions is in their ear. He's like literally telling them what the
yeah.
play is going to be. He's got to be up close because of the crowd noise. Now, as an aside, because, that Ohio State fans can be broken up into two categories, right? Either they want U of M to succeed outside of the game, just so that it makes the game better, or there's the Ohio State fans that are they just want
It's
U of M
Michigan,
to fail.
we hate them. Oh.
At any turn, they just want them to fail, and they don't care what the situation is. Now, okay, this isn't a fair or foul, but I'm just curious for your perspective in terms of which side are you on? Because I am in the of the belief that I want U of M to succeed in every way except for their matchup against Ohio State, because I think it not only does it strengthen the rivalry, it strengthens the conference. I think it makes Ohio State look better if they're able to be successful in the game. So that's where I'm at. What about you?
Yeah, I would say personally, I like the rivalry to be at its best. Like, even when Michigan, and that's what's so funny, like Ryan Day loses twice and people are like, Michigan was just getting their asses kicked every single year. And I've often said my time there in the 90s, like John Cooper, great coach, great teams, but couldn't beat Michigan. Like, it's that important. I kind of like during bowl season, for instance, I think that's probably my best example. During bowl season, before it changed, I would always root for the Big Ten, and if it meant Michigan, it meant Michigan. Do I like them? Hell no. Do I even despise them more because of this? Yes, but like I said, it doesn't benefit Ohio State. It doesn't benefit the Big Ten, because the reality is, like, one of those two teams is getting to the national championship or getting in the postseason, maybe both, and one of them could very well be a national champion. And I'm not counting out Georgia or anything like that. I'm just saying that's the reality. Why would you want to lose that just out of spite to like? But at the same time, what Michigan's done is serious. Like, that's what's so weird about this. I mentioned the recruiting violations, things you're used to seeing investigations be all about. This is unprecedented because this is like during the game, affecting the outcome of games. The integrity then of the game is at the forefront. You can't just like go, oh, well, everybody's doing it. No, not to that extent. So, yeah, I'm with you. Like, I want the rivalry to be at its best. But I also think I understand these other ADs and presidents that are putting pressure on Petitti. Like, this is ridiculous. Come on.
All right, Chico, last one I got for you because we're up against it here a little bit.
Yes.
I want to ask you about Antonio Pierce, interim Raiders head coach currently. Now, we were last night I was filming Come Get Some with Greg and Blake Williams. Who
Great. They had Eddie George on, right?
Yeah. I didn't get to fanboy for Eddie because, I didn't want to like talk over Greg and Blake.
Shout out to Greg and Blake, though. That's an awesome show. It really is.
Yeah. So Antonio Pierce was an undrafted free agent who actually played in Greg Williams' defense at one point in time before he went to the Giants. And he talked about how he clamored that like he didn't want him. He clamored to the front office that he didn't want the team to let him go, and then they did. He left Washington and went over to the Giants, and of course, the rest is history.
Right.
But now we've seen some pretty inspiring speeches from him, and Greg, of course, spoke very, very highly about Antonio as well. Fair or foul, Chico? Are you buying stock in this new regime in Oakland? Do you think that there's a future for Antonio Pierce as a head coach? It kind of reminds me, real quick, of Jeff Saturday in Indianapolis, where they just bring him in to be like the rah-rah guy. But it feels like Antonio Pierce, he has more, I guess, his vibe just feels more like head coach-esque than Saturday did.
Yeah, it's still way too early for this. I will say, I think what happened, not to take anything away from it because it was cool, I think it was predictable what you saw from the Raiders this weekend. Like, I think they were all sick and tired. I mean, everybody up and down, sick and tired of McDaniels. So not only do you have a guy that is a former player and respected player, you have a guy that comes in and then he starts breathing that fire, and that's exactly what they wanted to hear. And now, as far as sustainability, well, this is where, does he have all the attributes that you need to be? I can't. I'll take Greg's word. I can't speak to it. I don't know. But I don't think it sounds like Saturday, because Saturday wasn't – like Saturday was just – he was in the booth. He was – you know what I mean? Like he was doing ESPN. It's like, oh, I'll be there. Like, wait a minute. So, I mean, that's –
By the way, did you see Irsay in the locker room after that win this past weekend?
oh, God. Was he sober?
Honestly, I don't know, because he had to hold on to their head coach's hand the whole time he was dancing. He was like squeezing his hand. And his dance move was just like, it was so. I'll have to show it to you. It's great.
When you do like a top 5, which is not easy because you're going to leave somebody out, but when you do top 5 mug shots, Jim Irsay is always going to be in that on that list. Like that dude, when he gets booked, he gets booked, and he's obliterated. Crazy.
I hear now he just flies by helicopter. He hires a helicopter to take him whenever he goes out.
Imagine him and Antonio Brown in a helicopter.
I did have the pleasure of driving by his estate one time in Carmel, Indiana.
You were stalking him, Bohm. Yeah,
No, my ex was from Indiana, and we were visiting her friend.
You were stalking her and him. That's
okay.
all right.
Well,
All
it was quite an estate. That's my point.
All right. Well, we are out of time for this Tuesday. Coming up on tomorrow's show, 1:30 to be exact, the Hall of Famer, Joe Thomas. Can Joe maybe come out of retirement? We need some help on the O-line. I know he's slimmed down. Anyway, Joe Thomas will join us here on the show at 1:30, so looking forward to that. Thanks to Nick Shook. Terry Pluto was outstanding. Go watch the replay wherever you can watch the replay, and we'll be back with you again tomorrow at noon for Mr. Bombastic. I'm Mike Chico Borman. All of us here at Big Play Sports. Kids, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. See ya.